Hi, welcome to What Will You Create, the podcast all about what it takes to build a startup. I'm your host, Akash Goyal. Today we're talking to Richard Moran, an important guy in Silicon Valley. He's a venture capitalist, a best-selling author, the president of a college, and he knows more than most people about startups and entrepreneurship. We talked about all kinds of things, what it's like to work in the Valley, Facebook, self-driving cars, weaponized drones, how to become a venture capitalist, and what it takes to sell an investor on your idea. But the first thing I had to ask him about was the radio show he hosts. Actually, you have your own radio show.
I do. It's on weekends here in the U.S. It's on CBS, and it's called In the Workplace. And it's just on the weekends the U.S. stock market is closed. Well, all the stock markets are closed.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of radio stations have business reports, and they need content. So I fill in. It
Yeah,
works.
I read that you have more than a million listeners.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
pretty amazing.
yeah. Well, I think they're listening to me only because they're waiting for the news and weather that it follows.
I don't know if that's true. I mean, unfortunately, I've never had the chance to listen to your show. So you talk about
So
workplace.
yeah, so I talk about things that are sometimes topical, like what's going on right now,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes they're a little bit more deeper thoughts. Like I don't know if remember that. Well, I'm sure it was big news in Canada too about the Wells Fargo incentives that were all, people were selling the opening accounts at Wells Fargo and people didn't want them. And
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
talk a lot about, how incentives can backfire if you're not careful.
Mm-hmm.
So I talk about things like that. I know, it's, I try to keep it funny. Like I talk about I talk about it all the time because I always get so much grief for it. One of the things I talk about is, should you take your dog to work? And,
Should you
I
take
love
your dog to
dogs.
work?
No, I may as well take my children to work. They require attention. They eat your bagel. They pee on the rug. So no, don't take your dog to work. It's also a model that doesn't scale. If you're three people in a garage in Toronto, you can bring your dogs. But if you have 200 people in your office, don't bring them. That's 200 dogs.
Yeah. Interesting. It sounds like, just based on the description, it sounds similar to what you write in your books and especially your latest book.
It is.
Maybe I want to talk about your new book, The Thing About Work.
Sure. Yeah. Uh, the thing about work just came out. I'm really excited about it. It's my eighth book, and this is my best book. Um, and it's uh, in the my publisher calls it. It's a book about stop doing stupid stuff. Except she didn't use that word exactly. Uh, and it's about how to be successful because it's very prescriptive and it describes things that are happening in the workplace right now, but people don't talk about it. Things like um, you know uh, if you have a startup company, and I see them all the time, and everybody's sitting around on headphones,
Hmm.
and how do you create a culture when nobody talks to each other?
Right.
And it's also, I mean, one of the best things about work is the people that you meet and the friendships that you make. And if you never talk, how do you ever get to know people?
Right.
So, so I talk about, there's one of the things I talk about is creating a culture that's happy because people want to work. People want to do important things and feel like they're contributing. And I try to come up with a lot of different ways to make that happen. So another thing I talk about is meetings because we
Hmm.
all go to a lot of meetings, and sometimes we really don't need to have a meeting.
Yeah.
And I talk, one of the things that uh, I talk about is that, especially in startups and entrepreneurs are really guilty of this, is they can create a false sense of activity because they're really, 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 really busy, 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 busy. They have too many meetings. They have to do this, and sometimes if you stop at the end of the day or the beginning of the day and ask what's really important that needs to get done,
Hmm.
it will eliminate a lot of meetings. So those are the things that I talk about both on the radio and in the book. Things like also, what is business casual now? If if I get an invitation and it says business casual, does that mean flip-flops and shorts, or does that mean khaki pants and a blue blazer?
Right.
So, and those are all the fun things that I talk about. And the reason why the book is successful when people listen to the radio show is because nobody's talking about that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
So it works out to be a fun. I'm sort of an evangelist for just common sense in the workplace.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned the headphone thing because it was, the Silicon Valley that kind of sparked the whole open workspace thing,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is spreading everywhere. But when I was there, every place was an open workspace, but everyone was also wearing headphones. So
Yeah.
what do you do about that? Do you like ban headphones?
No. Well, part of it is because everybody's sitting 6 inches away from each other doing, at an open table working, you can't, people are using the headphones so that they can concentrate better. But
Hmm.
occasionally you need to take the headphones off. And sometimes instead of sending an email to the person who's sitting 6 inches away from you, take off your headphones and talk to them.
Yeah. So do you spend time in these workplaces? I mean, right now you are the president of Menlo College.
Yes, I do. Well, Menlo College is right in the heart of Silicon Valley.
Uh-huh.
So within, when I'm sitting in my office now at the college and probably within, 10 miles of where I'm sitting, there are maybe 1,000 startup companies.
Uh-huh.
Who knows? A lot. And so I see them all the time, and I visit them and I bring them on campus. So I see a lot of the things that startups do, and sometimes I can just walk into an organization and without doing a lot of research, just by glancing around, I can see whether there's a lot of energy or whether people are ready to bail out or what's going on. So, and I've also invested in a lot of startups, so I know a little bit about what it takes to be successful um, and some of the mistakes that I've seen many startups make.
Yeah, I mean that's a really interesting thing because you've done a lot of work as a venture capitalist. Is that something you're still doing, or?
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay.
It's a lot easier to spend other people's money. So, uh, so I'm not with a fund right now or anything, but I still see. Once you're in venture capital, you see deals. I mean, people, they just come to you. So I've been seeing them and making some investments, some small investments, but I do see deals all the time, and some of them are great ideas. Some of them uh, are not. So but there's still lots and lots of great ideas, rumbling around in Silicon Valley and looking for investors.
Right. So, I mean, people are probably constantly telling you ideas and pitching you ideas. So, what makes a convincing pitch? What do you look for?
Well, this is going to sound really basic, but I'm going to make it as basic as I can because these are some of the things that I think in entrepreneurs miss. In the pitch, one of the things I need to know right away is what is it?
Hmm.
Is it an app? Is it software? Is it hardware? Is it a drone? Is it artificial intelligence? Is it IoT? What is it? And so often the entrepreneur is so caught up in the product or the company that they're on page 20 and I'm still on page one trying to figure out what is it.
Hmm.
Um, Another thing that entrepreneurs need to convey is that it's a big idea, not a little idea. So if I'm interested in something that will help create a flying car or help, cure cancer. I'm not as interested in an app
Mm-hmm.
or in something that's small. So, and I think lots of times, if an entrepreneur has a little idea, they can probably do that on their own on their credit card.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but if they're looking for outside money, it needs to be a pretty big idea. Um, I also see entrepreneurs say that there's no competition for their idea, which immediately tells me that they haven't done any research.
Yeah.
There's always a competitor out there. If
Uh-huh.
it's such a good idea, somebody else is thinking about it.
Yeah.
Um, and another uh, mistake I see is when companies or entrepreneurs will say, "This is such a great idea that this is going to put Google out of business," or it's too late. They're not going to go out of business.
Yeah. Yeah. Or it's
So
the next Google or the next Facebook.
yeah, yeah. I hope it's the next Google, but by and large, it's there are lots of big ideas still, and in 10 years, the big companies, there's big companies that are being created right now that are in somebody's garage. But in the short term, I would entrepreneurs just need to be realistic about what they're presenting and under. Oh, one last thing, and this is often overlooked. Coincidentally, yesterday I saw three different pitches from entrepreneurs. One, I was visiting somewhere, and I was a guest, and one presentation was about had to do with basketball in Australia. Another pitch had to do with eyeglasses using water in India, and another pitch had to do with purifying water in Mexico. And in all three pitches, they a lot of time was spent on what was going on in these other countries, as opposed to telling me about the product. And the moral of the story is that most investors, especially venture capitalists, are pretty smart. So you don't. I know about basketball in Australia. I know about eyeglasses in India, and I know about water in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So don't tell me about that. Tell me about your product, not about what I can glean from the newspapers. So so they underestimate the breadth and depth of the knowledge of a lot of investors.
Right. So, like, I mean, I think one of the really interesting things was they're on page 20 and you're on page 1. I think like, I mean, I know I'm guilty of that. That happens a lot because you've been thinking about the idea day and night for months.
Yeah.
So everything makes sense to you. And then it's really hard to think from the perspective of someone who's hearing your idea for the first time. So
That's, you know,
how do you, is it just a matter of being conscious of these things? Do you need to practice your pitch lots of times with other people before you get there?
yeah, you need to talk about it with someone who's not in the garage with you, but someone who, is brand new to the idea. And a way that I often recommend is using metaphors or using um, analogies that help create something that is uh, conjures up a picture right away.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the hot metaphor right now is Uber. You know, we are the Uber of you know personal computers.
Yeah.
Or another metaphor that's working right now is we are the Munchery or the Blue Apron of toothpaste or healthcare
Yeah.
products.
I've heard a lot of Airbnb analogies too.
Yeah. Well, Airbnb and Uber are the same
Yeah.
analogy
All the
as,
sharing economy
yeah,
stuff.
they
Yeah.
they don't own any hotels or cars,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a high valuation. So metaphors can work, and so can analogies. We are as PayPal is to eBay, we are to Facebook. or something like that. So any way that you can use, tell a story quickly about what it is can really help you. And that's a real art. That's something that often you need help with, because it's hard to come up with those metaphors and analogy that makes sense.
So how do you get that help?
You keep working at it. It's like writing a rock and roll song. You keep working at it, and then all of a sudden you'll it'll just come to you. It's one of the hardest things as an author, somebody who writes books. One of the hardest things to do is come up with the title.
Hmm.
And as soon as you get the title, wow, the world changes. But until you get the title, you're running around in the bushes and the brambles. So, and the same thing is true with coming up with metaphors. And I think I mentioned when I was presenting that I saw a deal not long ago where an entrepreneur had a toothache and uh, in order could not get to the dentist, so he stuck his iPhone in his mouth, took a picture, and sent that to his dentist, and he was he was diagnosed, and he was quickly cured, and and in that case, he had neither a metaphor or an analogy, but I could visualize a toothache and him sticking his iPhone in his mouth to take a picture.
Hmm.
And so that sort of that use case, the walkthrough can also be really, really helpful in just uh, helping people understand, helping investors understand the problem that you're trying to solve.
That makes a lot of sense. So
Yeah,
it seems like, I mean, you need a good way to tell your story.
yeah. And as you know, there's a saying in the venture capital world that they say there's an infinite demand for the unavailable.
Hmm.
So you hope that the product or the company is going to solve a problem or provide a service that is not currently available. The driver. I'm sitting again in Silicon Valley, and it's become routine to see driverless cars roaming
Yeah.
around, and that's I see it, I get it, and there's a lot of investment dollars following those concepts because they're solving the driverless cars are solving not the problem of I don't want to drive. They're solving the problem of automobile crashes
Hmm.
because they have the software and the sensors and everything else that allows them to make sure that it's they're not going to crash. And I think, don't hold me to the statistic, but something like 80% of car crashes, of automobile crashes, happen when people are changing lanes.
Okay. Yeah. I
And
mean, that's one of the hardest things to do when you're driving. So,
yeah, and the driverless cars do not change lanes when there's any danger.
yeah.
So that's the problem that they're solving is an insurance problem, not lazy people driving.
Yeah. That makes sense. I guess the thing that everyone always brings up with self-driving cars is the whole ethical debate
Yeah,
of what do
I
you
know it's
do?
scary. It is. I mean, it's scary when you see them.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm always afraid that the Wi-Fi is going to go out. And, then what happens? Because they're all driven by Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So
I guess the infrastructure will just have to change with it.
yeah, we're a ways away, and I think they're pretty careful about where they drive. But Facebook is now they have the prototype. They've developed a pilotless airplane,
Oh yeah.
and it's going to fly above commercial airspace, and that's a little interesting too. About there's a lot of ethics and there's a lot of things about that because it's not it will be able to provide Wi-Fi, but also be able to identify who's on Wi-Fi and who isn't, where they are.
Mm-hmm.
So the saw of technology cuts many different ways.
Yeah.
Well, and I just saw another deal I just saw. Uh, it's a great idea. It's a company that is involved in the drone business. It's not hard to buy a drone or find a drone, but they've developed the software, the brain that will allow the drone to follow your cell phone,
Mm-hmm.
and most importantly, it will, so if you're in the wilds of Saskatchewan and you run out of medicine, the drone will find you based on your cell phone and deliver your medicine. But so it's a great idea,
Mm-hmm.
especially in that use case. But what if the drone is carrying a little hand grenade and it follows me too?
Yeah.
And so it's that it can get complicated pretty quickly.
Yeah. That doesn't seem to stop people though. Just
No,
develop the technology and let the regulation sort itself out. But
yeah, yeah. Well, in fact, a lot of drones now, especially if they're delivering anything at low altitude, are geared so that you can't, if you touch them or try to steal them, they're sort of armed with pepper spray or something, so that, or
wow.
yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard to steal a drone. I don't know why anybody would want one anyway, but it'll be hard.
Yeah. Well,
So it's
definitely if like Amazon and Google are thinking of using them for delivery, they're not
yeah,
going to want people messing around with them.
yeah. No, um, it's pretty exciting with the uses, that the applications, but wow, it's a crazy world, and some of the applications are a little scary.
Yeah. I think that may be true of a lot of new technology though.
It is.
The thing
It
people
is.
always bring up is like when the car was first invented,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
everyone was
Uh,
so used to horses.
yeah. And I think at some point we will get used to all the things that we're talking about. We'll be used to drones. We'll be used to self-driving cars. We'll be used to pilotless airplanes.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but we're not there yet. And so that creates all the opportunities for more entrepreneurs. It's all the things that have yet to be invented. It's a
Yeah.
pretty exciting time.
Yeah. It's always fun to hear someone say, everything that like everything's kind of already been invented.
Yeah, yeah.
They're always wrong.
That's never the case. And people, there are such big ideas roaming around, and in the Silicon Valley, I mean, people talk about the big ideas, the medium ideas, and the really little ideas. And the big venture capitalists are going after the big ideas like curing cancer, and then there's a lot of medium ideas, which a lot of it has to do with data. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and the other hot thing right now is, I'll call it logistics, but it's about how to use technology to really refine the supply chain for, how do we get here from California, how do we get fresh vegetables to Toronto, not in 2 days, but in 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So people are working on that in big ways. And then there's all the little ideas, which are, apps that are, or derivatives of technology that already exists. And those are fine too.
Yeah.
They're just, sometimes they're not, you can make a good small business, but it's not going to be a big company.
Right.
What Will You Create is sponsored by enginehire.org. EngineHire is trying to change the way engineering students get hired. Has your company thought about hiring engineering students? Engineering students can bring useful skills, new ideas, and fresh perspectives to your organization. You also don't have to pay them too much, and there are a lot of government incentives available for hiring students. The problem is that traditional university hiring platforms and processes are inefficient and outdated. EngineHire has profiles of engineering students that go beyond their resume and transcript, and they can effectively deliver you the students that are the best fit for your company and position. To learn more about how you can recruit top young engineering talent, visit enginehire.org. That's enginehire.org. Are you an engineering student, or do you know any engineering students? Create your profile for free on Engine Hire and get hired. All right, back to the conversation with Richard Moran.
So it's kind of interesting, like on the other side of the venture capital, like as many people as I've met that want to start startups, I've met so many people who also say they want to be venture capitalists, like especially students, and it's like there's no, it's not like an educational path that, you know, you get a bachelor's in venture capitalism. The standard path seems to be to, you know, first do something of your own, and then it kind of just happens from there if it makes sense.
It is. It's for one, taking a step back, I think a lot of students have an unrealistic idea of what a venture capitalist does, because they work hard, and you know they for every Facebook, there's 10,000 really bad ideas that you glean through. So the exciting part is that you see, you know, basically you see the future. You see all these great ideas. You see interesting things being formed, and you see entrepreneurs who are always fascinating. Um, but it's a little bit also, you know, there's a lot of luck involved about where you make the investment. There is due diligence, but it's crazy. But for someone in school, it's a really hard um, uh, it's a really hard career to begin, because most people who are in venture capital either already had a startup or two, so know what it takes, or have been on the investment side for a long time, so they know, you know, how to allocate the money accordingly. But and there's not very many. There's, you know, it's not a big venture capital firm might only have 10 partners and, you know, 20 associates. So there's a probability curve here that tells you that you're probably not going to get into that world until you have a successful startup and have $1 billion, and you might want to invest alongside the venture capital firm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's not. So I don't necessarily encourage people right out of school to try to go that path, because I think it's fraught with rejection.
Yeah, I don't think that's something. I mean, you probably wouldn't even be a good venture capitalist if you even got the position out of school.
Well, right out of school, the job would be working in due diligence,
Right.
and that is that might sound interesting until you stay up all night for 3 nights in a row because a partner meeting is coming up, or until you try to do the diligence and it's nothing is there. Mm-hmm. How do you do diligence on cold fusion or flying cars?
Yeah, there's nothing to reference.
Yeah. So it's a difficult job, and but I encourage people that if they want to get into that world, then do a startup is probably a better route to go than to do than try to get into the venture capital world right away.
Yeah. I think the moral of the story is that everything is hard work. It's just, I think, like Dragon's Den and Shark Tank give people a flawed impression of, you know, what it is, just kind of sitting, listening to people and throwing money around.
Yeah.
But
and Donald Trump is going to save all those perceptions.
Yeah. Actually, so that reminds me, I was wondering what is the role of a president in a college?
Well, there's where to start. A college president, I've often described it, is similar to being a mayor, because there are many constituents. I have alumni and students and faculty and staff and neighbors and government entities. So there's a lot of people to keep happy, just like a mayor would have a lot of people to keep happy. And it's not as much like being a CEO as it is like being a mayor. But the best thing about being a college president is the students. I like, sort of like as a venture capitalist, the best thing about it is being around entrepreneurs. As a college president, the best thing about it is being around students and capturing their energy and seeing what they're talking about and going to the basketball games and all those kinds of things. So that is by far the best part. And we also, we teach entrepreneurship. The things that we're talking about here are things that are embedded in our curriculum. So, and students are required to come up with ideas, and students are required to give business pitch, startup pitch presentations. And we do have a Dragon's Den kind of format here. And the students are great. The ideas in general are almost always too vague. And if I had any piece of advice for students who have ideas about companies, lots of times the ideas are too vague, and that's what they need to keep on double clicking on the idea, get it to a spot that it's investable. Solving the water problem in Africa is too vague. But if you have a product that requires no energy and will purify water in Nigeria, now we're talking.
Right. So the scope of the problems you're trying to solve need to be more focused. Is that
more focused and more understandable, so that the company that you're building can create a solution. There probably are companies that can create a solution for all the water problems in Africa, but that's going to be 3M or DuPont or Coca-Cola or somebody,
right?
Not three guys who are Menlo College students.
Actually, there was one thing I remember when you came. You told the story of pop chips. I thought that was a really cool story. If you want to,
sure,
just recount that.
Yeah. Well, there's two parts to the story. One is that a lot of entrepreneurs have this vision that investors all hang around in big offices and make you very stressful and give you a presentation. And I met the founder of Pop Chips in a parking lot, and he told me about his idea, and that's how it all started. The second lesson about Pop Chips is, for those of you who don't know, Pop Chips uses really intense heat in order to pop potatoes, just like corn is popped in popcorn, and it is more healthy and less calories and all those kinds of things, less salt. So if a category like snack foods seems to be one that is totally saturated, that there's no disruption. How could, a pretzel is a pretzel, a potato chip is a potato chip, and so how can there possibly be disruption in that category? But Pop Chips managed to do it, and now from starting with zero and an idea about an oven, what they did was they altered an oven, a commercial oven that made rice cakes, and altered that oven so that it would make kernels of potatoes. And they started from zero, and now it's probably a $300 or $400 million company. So, and it didn't take long. So the moral of the story is that no matter the category, it can still be disrupted.
Cool. I think that's a really awesome place to end, and you gotta run. So
it's been fun.
That was fun. Well, I thought so at least. Hope you did too, and I hope you learned something. I know I did. We'll have more great conversations next time on What Will You Create? What Will You Create is a production of creaate.co. We're a design company that works with people like you to bring cool ideas to life. If you are looking for professional CAD and engineering design, check us out at creaate.co. That's creaate.co. Thanks a lot for listening to our very first episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. We really enjoyed making it. If you want to get in touch with us, you can visit us on our website or tweet at us. We're at createco on Twitter. If you enjoyed the episode, you can also leave us a review on iTunes and subscribe to the show. And if you're working on something cool and want to be featured on the podcast, let us know. Special thanks to Alan Chong, without whom this podcast may never have happened. Thanks, see you again next week, and till then, keep thinking. What will you create?